ලයිෆ් බොයි ෂැම්පු චූටි රුපියල් 70යි.
Tonight, first things first, Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha takes office and holds talks with foreign envoys on a financial assistance consortium. Brass tacks, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy explains why a new cabinet is the need of the hour for Sri Lanka.
Something has to be done and done quickly because, as I said, even the fund program cannot be finalized without movement on the debt restructuring, and the debt restructuring can really be taken forward only if the financial and legal advisors are appointed.
Conditional support. The 10 independent parties say they will only support the government on decisions of national interest. Good signs. Central bank interventions bear fruit with the first rupee appreciation since the 8th of March free fall. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9 this Friday, the 13th of May, 2022.
සුවඳ ජැස්මින් සහ විටමින් E සාරය සමගින් Navalax White.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're watching First at 9 and I'm David Ebert. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha assumed duties today after his swearing-in ceremony last evening. At the outset today, the Premier held talks with envoys of the United States, China, India, Japan and the United Kingdom today on the possibility of forming a foreign consortium for financial assistance. The envoys had welcomed the move towards political stability and have expressed willingness to help stabilize Sri Lanka's economy soon.
The biggest questions in the minds of many until yesterday, after former Prime Minister Rajapaksa's resignation on the 9th of May, was who would pick up from where he left off. The answer to this question came yesterday when leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickramsingha, took oaths before President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to head his sixth government. Shortly after, Samaneka Nayaka was named as the new secretary to Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha. Today, Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha assumed duties at Temple Trees. Following this, the Premier engaged in cordial conversation with Temple Tree staff. Addressing them, Prime Minister Wickramsingha stated that his sole purpose was to ensure the recovery of the country's economy. Soon after, the Premier then met with the ambassadors of India, Japan and the United States and China, where according to the PM's media unit, discussions centered on the formation of a foreign consortium for financial assistance. The four nations are Sri Lanka's four largest donors at present. During his talks with the Premier, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle discussed ways to restore the country's economy and stability while ensuring the well-being of the people through a democratic process. Meanwhile, the Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Mizukoshi Hideaki, also met with the Premier this afternoon and has pledged Japan's continued support towards the stabilization of Sri Lanka's economy. In the meantime, US Ambassador Julie Chung also called on the new Premier today, where she brought up the subject of the 19th Amendment and the strengthening of oversight committees in Parliament. PM Wickramsingha also discussed the upcoming visit of a US Treasury team to the island. Later on, the Chinese Ambassador Cui Zhenghong met Prime Minister Wickramsingha. He expressed his country's willingness to continue to support Sri Lanka while also pledging to review existing assistance provided to the country. The Prime Minister also spoke to British High Commissioner Sarah Houlton prior to her departure back to the UK. The High Commissioner is scheduled to brief the British government on the situation in Sri Lanka. Following the diplomatic meetings today, Premier Ranil Wickramsingha held a special meeting with former ministers Kanchana Wijesekara, Susil Premajayantha and Sagar Ratnayaka and senior officials from the Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Petroleum Resources. During the meeting, the prevailing energy crisis in the country and the measures that can be taken to ease public burdens were discussed. Meanwhile, other foreign envoys have taken to Twitter to express their wishes to the PM. Taking to Twitter, President of the Maldives, Ibrahim Mohammed Solih, congratulated Wickramsingha on his appointment and added that they were confident that under his leadership, Sri Lanka would be able to overcome the challenges that it presently faces and bring greater peace and prosperity to Sri Lankans. Meanwhile, the Australian High Commissioner's Office for Sri Lanka and the Maldives said that the appointment of PM Ranil Wickramsingha is an opportunity for Sri Lanka to address the current crisis. The tweet added that Australia encourages the establishment of a new government to work towards an enduring solution for all Sri Lankans. Further, the British High Commission also tweeted that the coming weeks are crucial for bringing political and economic stability to Sri Lanka. It added that the UK encourages the government of Sri Lanka led by PM Ranil Wickramsingha to work towards this goal and respond to the needs of the Sri Lankan people. In the meantime, German ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Holger Siebert, tweeted on behalf of the European Union and its members, they see the appointment of the new premier as signs of a political process. It added that the EU hopes the coming weeks will offer resolution to the political instability that deepened the economic crisis, while encouraging all parties to work for the benefit of all Sri Lankans and to remain peaceful. Also taking to Twitter, Norwegian ambassador to Sri Lanka Trine Eskadel said that Norway hopes that the appointment of Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha is a step towards political stability. She added that it was crucial to appoint a capable and representative cabinet dedicated to solving Sri Lanka's socio-economic crisis. Ambassador Eskadel went on to say that the people's daily lives in Sri Lanka must be brought back to normalcy to pave the way for economic recovery.
Now, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa has been informed by the president that his decision to appoint Ranil Wickramsingha was based on multiple factors. However, it was Premadasa's rejection of an invite to lead an interim government that factored most. In a letter to the opposition leader, the president also explained that further it was not possible to work with some of the demands communicated in Premadasa's letter yesterday, sent on the cusp of Ranil Wickramsingha's swearing in. In response to the president's letter, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa has said today that his party will not nominate any members to the cabinet.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has issued a reply to opposition leader Sajid Premadasa's conditions for accepting premiership that was sent yesterday. In his letter, the president had informed the opposition leader that he cannot change his decision to appoint Ranil Wickramsingha to the post, as Premadasa has previously rejected his invitation to form a government. The letter explains that Premadasa did not respond to a request made by former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his cabinet to take over the post of Prime Minister in an interim government. The president also noted the opposition leader's comments at a press conference on the 10th of this month, where he clearly stated that he was not ready to be a part of an interim government. This, he explained, was his reason for swearing in UNP leader Ranil Wickramsingha as a premier. He went on to say that the other reason was because some of Premadasa's demands outlined in the letter he received shortly before the swearing in of Wickramsingha could not be fulfilled. The president then requested the opposition leader to inform him if any Samagi Jala Balawegaya members were willing to take positions in the new cabinet as a matter of national interest. This, the president added, needs to be done soon because the appointment of a new cabinet could not be postponed when the country faces a serious political and economic crisis.
Now, many political parties have expressed dismay over the appointment of Ranil Wickramsingha as Prime Minister yesterday, as they believe that despite the president's beliefs, the new premier doesn't command a majority in parliament. However, the parties state that even though they remain independent and in the opposition, they will support any positive steps taken to restore the economy.
Even though the premiership void was filled yesterday with the appointment of Ranil Wickramsingha, many political parties have expressed disappointment. They state that even though President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had said in his speech on Wednesday that a new Prime Minister who commands a majority of the parliament will be appointed, the new PM Ranil Wickramsingha does not have one. As such, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the Jatika Jana Balawegaya, and the 10 political party independent alliance has decided that they will not accept any offers extended to them by the government and will continue to remain independent.
ආරාධනා ලැබිලා තිබෙනවා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතා අගමැති කිරීමෙන් පසුව හදන ආණ්ඩුවේ අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයට එක්වීමට සහ රජයට සහයෝගය සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි රජයේ අමාත්‍ය ධූර අරගෙන කිසිසේත්ම රජයේ කොටස්කාරයෝ වීමට සූදානම් නැහැ. ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂයේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවක්. නමුත් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතා පත්කිරීමේ ක්‍රමවේදය තුල සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවක් පිහිටුවීමේ කටයුතු සිදු වෙලා නැහැ. එහෙත් ආහාර හිගය, ගෑස්, පෙට්‍රල්, ඩීසල්, විදුලිය ඒ නිසා එවැනි කරුණු සඳහා අපි අවශ්‍ය සහයෝගය දෙනවා.
දැන් මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට දෙන්නවීම ගැන ඒකට දැන් අකමැති වෙලා ඉන්න විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයේ පක්ෂත් එක්තරා දුරකට වග කියන්න ඕන. මොකද රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට ඔය පිනා chance එක වැටෙන්න ඉඩ හැරලා බලන් හිටීමේ මේ චෝදනාව ඒ හැමෝට වෙනවා. හැබැයි රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයා අගමැති කිරීමෙන් මේ රටේ දැන් මේ තිබෙන තත්ත්වය පාලනයට ස්ථාවර තත්ත්වයකට ගේන්න පුළුවන් කියලා ඒ මෝඩ විශ්වාසයක් අපට නැහැ. මොකද අද මේ තියෙන අර්බුදයේ එක්තරා වග උත්තරකාරී. හැබැයි අපි ඒ පිහිටුවා ගනු ලබන පාලනය කඩාකප්පල් කරන්න හෝ ඒ පාලන තන්ත්‍රයේ හොඳ දෙයක් කරනවා නම් ඒකට සහයෝගය නොදී ඉන්න හෝ එහෙම නැත්නම් අර පටු දේශපාලන කණ්ණාඩියෙන් බලලා වෛරී දේශපාලනයක් කරන්න අපේ බලාපොරොත්තුවක් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපි පක්ෂ 10 එකමුතුවට අයත් മന്ത്രിවරු අපි සියලු දෙනාම විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයේ ඉඳිමින් අපේ ස්වාධීන කණ්ඩායමක් හැටියට විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයේ ඉඳිමින් ආණ්ඩුවේ යහපත් පියවර එනවා නම් අපි ඒවට අවශ්‍ය සහයෝගය දෙනවා.
ජනාධිපති හිතනවා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ බහුතර විශ්වාසය දිනා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා හැංගෙන්නේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට කියලා. ඒ නිසා ඇත්ත ගත්තොත් මේකේ උඩින් රනිල් යටින් බැසිල් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට දැන් එන්න ඕන. මේ විකඩම්කාරී පාර්ලිමේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව අනුමත කරනවද කියලා බලන්න ඕන. දැන් අපි දන්නවා නැවත හරිද මහජන മന്ത്രിවරු එහෙට මෙහෙට විකිනෙන සේල් එක පටන් අරගෙන තිබෙන්නේ. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ආර්ථික වැට්ටුවක් කීමින්, රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහ බැංකුව හොරා, රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජාතික දේපල විකුණා කීමින් ජනවරමක් කියලා. ආපහු ආණ්ඩුවක් හදා ගන්නවා ඔහුට කරට අත දාගෙන. ඒ නිසාම අපි දැන් කිසිසේත්ම මේ අර්බුදේ නිර්මාපකයන්ගේ මේට විසඳුම් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Now, the former central bank governor, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, says that right now Sri Lanka needs to have a functioning cabinet soon if debt restructuring efforts are to be carried out. He added that the only thing stopping the debt restructuring talks is the delay in appointing the legal and financial advisors for which cabinet approval is vital. Member of the Presidential Advisory Group on Multilateral Engagement and Debt Sustainability and former central bank governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy says that expectations for a fairly quick staff-level agreement with the IMF are reasonable and could happen in the next 4 to 8 weeks.
Negotiations, as you know, are currently underway. They're ongoing. And the governor has expressed that he is confident that a staff-level agreement can be reached fairly quickly. And that seems reasonable because already, quite a lot of the adjustment has taken place. There's been a big exchange rate adjustment, though perhaps the way that was done could have been better, but it has taken place, probably overshot. The monetary board have had a big interest rate adjustment. There may be a little bit more to do, but a big adjustment has already been made. And the fuel prices have been adjusted. Again, maybe a bit more to go, but a big adjustment has been made. So quite a lot has already been done. The big three buckets really are, one is the fiscal framework. What is the fiscal framework going to be that will get us on a path to debt sustainability? The second is what is the electricity prices, which probably will need to be adjusted significantly, and one or two things in terms of improving SOE performance beyond the electricity prices and the fuel prices. So, the chances of getting staff level agreement within, say, 4 to 8 weeks is pretty good in my view. And if we get staff level agreement and it is announced, because there is no basic agreement between the government and the IMF, it will be a question of pace and sequencing, etc., that need to be negotiated. And so between 4 to 8 weeks, there's a reasonable chance of getting staff level agreement. And if we are very lucky, we might be able to do it even a bit quicker, but more likely to be in the 4 to 8 week window. The staff level agreement, though, however, is only the first step, right? Because then the fund staff will have to make a proposal to the executive board of the IMF for an EFF facility, which would give it about $1 billion a year for over 3 years. Now, for that to happen, we have to show significant progress towards debt sustainability. So that is the second thing. But then to get the board paper done and approved, one needs to move on the debt sustainability.
Meanwhile, commenting on the sudden debt standstill announced by the central bank, Dr. Kumaraswamy explained that it wasn't like Sri Lanka had much of a choice at the time when Governor Dr. Nandalal Wikremesinghe took office. Avoiding a hard default, he says, was something that he was sure Sri Lanka's creditors understood the consequences of.
The government has announced a standstill. There was no choice. There are those who say that this was not done in the right sequence, that the creditors should have been consulted before it was announced. All that is very true. But when the governor took office, within days, he found himself with a situation where reserves Actually, on that day, the 13th of April, reserves were down to $5 million US. Gross official reserves were down to $5 million. I think the finance minister said it's less than 50 million in parliament the other day. But on that day, it was down to $5 million. And a few days later, we had a ISB coupon maturing, which had to be paid. So if we didn't do it on the 13th of April, we would have had a hard default because we wouldn't have been able to pay the coupon. So that is why it was done in the way it was done. And I think the creditors understand that. And so hopefully shouldn't deter the creditors from engaging with us constructively as we go forward. But the next thing that has to happen is the appointment of the financial and legal advisors. And my understanding is that the process, the procurement committees have done their work. They have made their recommendations, but there was cabinet approval required. And if the cabinet met on Monday, we probably would have had those appointments made. Something has to be done and done quickly because, as I said, even the fund program cannot be finalized without movement on the debt restructuring, and the debt restructuring can really be taken forward only if the financial and legal advisors are appointed to be able to negotiate the debt restructuring on our behalf.
And we'll be back with more local stories right after this short break. Do stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, the Public Utilities Commission announced that there will be no power cuts on Vesak Poya Day, adding that they also hope to provide uninterrupted electricity supply to the people on Sunday, the day following Vesak Poya as well. In the meantime, there will be a 5.5-hour power cut scheduled for tomorrow by the Commission. Queues, meanwhile, continue to exist for both gas and fuel due to the shortage of stocks.
Shortages of essential goods have become commonplace since the country has been unable to purchase imports due to the lack of dollar reserves since the beginning of the year. However, it has been the need for fuel that impacted the public the most so far. With lower quantities of fuel available in the island at the moment, people queue up near refueling stations despite the island-wide curfew. Further, some filling stations remain closed as well due to a lack of deliveries. In the meantime, the situation with regard to the gas is no different, as a heavy shortage exists. The public continue to queue up near the litro gas outlets with the hopes of securing a cylinder. What can be seen now is that the queues have expanded further than before. In Dematakoda, a protest was held this morning demanding solutions to the LP gas shortage in the country. In the afternoon, another protest was worked off in Kirulapana today, blocking the high-level road. Litro sources told AdaDerana that a 3,500 metric ton LPG shipment has arrived in Sri Lankan waters. However, the company is unable to clear the shipment due to lack of dollars. In the meantime, the Public Utilities Commission said that there will be no power cuts imposed on Vesak Poya Day. Chairman Janaka Ratnayaka added that they are hoping to provide uninterrupted electricity to the people on Sunday, which is the day following Vesak Poya Day. However, for tomorrow, the Commission has announced 5.5-hour power cuts. Giving reasons as to why 5.5-hour power cuts were imposed, Ratnayaka said that none of the thermal power plants were in operation within the last 2 or 3 days due to the shortage of fuel. He also said that a crude oil shipment had arrived in the country a week ago. However, the government has not been able to find the funds to get it released.
Now, rains that have intensified as of last evening in the southwestern part of the island are expected to continue for the next few days. According to the Department of Meteorology, heavy showers are expected to reduce from the 18th of this month.
Several areas in the southwestern part of the country experienced heavy showers since last night as the southwestern monsoon gradually establishes over the island. According to the Department of Meteorology's 24-hour cycle, which ends from 8 am today, the highest rainfall was reported from the Kukuleganga area in Kalutara that received 115 millimeters of rain. Following the heavy deluge in the area, 2 spill gates of the Kukuleganga reservoir were opened during the day. In addition, showers pouring into the central hills led to the opening of 3 spill gates of the Polgama Dam as well. Meanwhile, heavy showers also fell over the Ratnapura district, resulting in minor floods after the Kaluganga overflowed. What the Department of Meteorology expects is that the heavy showery conditions to continue until the 18th of May.
Southwest monsoon has not fully established over Sri Lanka yet. However, with the formation of cyclonic storm Asani last week, southwesterly wind flow has established at the low levels of the atmosphere. Even though the cyclonic storm has weakened into a low pressure area at present, we can see that the southwesterly wind flow, and because of that, the prevailing showery conditions we experience over the southwestern parts of the country is likely to continue further during next maybe 6 to 7 days. We can expect showers at times over western central Sabaragamuwa provinces as well as in Galle and Matra districts. Heavy falls above 100 millimeter also can be expected some places over this area. Till 18th we can expect this showery conditions with heavy falls.
Further, wind speeds are expected to increase up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour at times over the western slope of the Central Hills and the northern, north central and northwestern provinces as well as in the Hambantota district.
Now, the Indian High Commission categorically denies that it or the Indian Consulates Generals or the Assistant High Commission of India in Sri Lanka have stopped issuing visas to Sri Lankans. In a tweet, the Indian High Commission in Colombo said that there were operational difficulties due to the inability of visa-being staff in the past few days, as most of the staff who are Sri Lankan nationals are yet to attend office. The High Commission also said that they are striving to return functioning to normal levels soon, and added that they are committed to facilitating ease of travel for Sri Lankans to India, and Sri Lankans are welcome in India just as Indians are in Sri Lanka. Now, the curfew that was reimposed today at 2 p.m. is scheduled to be lifted at 6 a.m. tomorrow and reimposed again at 6 p.m. on the same day, and will be lifted again at 5 a.m. on Sunday the 15th of May. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defence has called on the public to report any criminal activities involving assault, looting, damaging of public or private property, and of mobs and violent groups involved in such incidents. The public has been asked to reach out to the Ministry of Defence on special hotlines set up for the purpose.
The curfew that was imposed across the country to prevent the violence that prevailed on Monday, the 9th of May, following the attack on peaceful protesters was lifted at 7 a.m. today and reimposed again at 2 p.m. Similar to yesterday, the people of many cities across many districts used the 7-hour curfew-free window to move about and buy essential commodities. Due to the curfew, many people reported to work today between the span of time the curfew was lifted. In the meantime, the Ministry of Defence said today that civilians don't need to be worried about the deployment of troops or their movements in and around towns. Commander of the Sri Lanka Army General Shavendra Silla said in a media release that troops have been deployed in and around cities for practical and economical purposes in the midst of fuel crisis, as those troop-carrying vehicles have enough capacity to accommodate more personnel, unlike in many other vehicles rented by the Army on payment basis. The Defence Ministry further went on to thank the support extended by the people towards restoring normalcy. In addition, the Ministry of Defence went on to request the general public to inform details of criminal activities such as unlawful mobs or violent groups and incidents of damaging public and private property, looting and assault from any part of the island to 2 new hotlines that have been established. The ministry stated that the public can call on the hotlines 076-739-2977 and 011-244-1146 and the Ministry of Public Security on 118. Meanwhile, the President's Media Division stated that the curfew, once lifted tomorrow at 6 a.m. will be reimposed at 6 p.m. on the same day and will be lifted at 5 a.m. on Sunday the 15th of May.
Now, the protesters at the Golface Green have highlighted a list of 8 demands to the President formulated by the people at the protest site and have called on the government to heed this request. The chief request by them was for the President to resign immediately and for an immediate system change to be brought about.
Many people continue to join in the peaceful protest at the Golface Green despite the curfew that is in place. Last night, the protesters at the Gota Gogama protest site announced a list of 8 demands that was termed Beyond the Golface Green. The protesters made it clear that from the list of demands, their main demand was for the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The next main demand the protesters highlighted was the need for a complete system change, and that they expect to see this coming out of the parliament now. They also said that this was the will of the people and called on the government to heed to the demands stipulated on the list. In the meantime, the protesters at the Golface Green staged a protest march last night from the Gota Gogama protest site against the appointment of Prime Minister Ranil Wickramsingha. Meanwhile, a group of people began yet another protest in front of the Premier's official residence Temple Trees under the name No Deal. The protesters stated that they expect justice to be executed against those who attacked the peaceful protesters on the 9th of May. Meanwhile, the police requested the people to report any information they have on assaults that were carried out on peaceful protesters and damages to public and private property on the 9th of May. The public has been requested to call on 011 242 2176 or 011 232 0145 or 071 859 2087.
Now, the Sri Lankan rupee appreciated against the US dollar for the first time since the rupee float was announced by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka on the 8th of March. The selling rate of US dollar, which was previously between 377 rupees and 380 rupees yesterday, dropped to 365 rupees today. This development came after the announcement of some measures in the past weeks, such as the issuance of operating instructions to reduce the volatility of the exchange rate by the central bank last Wednesday.
The Sri Lankan rupee tanked at uncontrollable levels against the US dollar after the central bank decided to float the rupee on the 8th of March this year, after the previous central bank governor kept it pegged at 202 rupees and 99 cents for months on end. As for last evening, the rupee was being quoted up at 377 rupees against the US dollar as per central bank data. However, commercial banks were quoting the dollar at 380 rupees yesterday. According to the central bank, the rupee has depreciated by 44.3% as of last evening. However, today, after months of going downhill, the rupee surprisingly gained against the US dollar today. Today, the central bank selling price was stated at 364 rupees and 98 cents, while commercial banks were selling at 365 rupees. Some commentators on social media were quick to incorrectly attribute this to signs of political stability brought on with the appointment of UNP leader Ranil Wickramsingha as the country's prime minister. However, nothing could be further from the truth, as measures taken by the central bank led by Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe deserve every bit of credit for this development. Among the measures implemented in recent weeks was the issuance of operating instructions to commercial banks on managing exchange rate volatility. As per this mechanism, instructions were issued to commercial banks to maintain 360 rupees as a middle spot exchange for the US dollar interbank transactions, and that too with a variation margin of 2 rupees and 60 cents. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe explained the measures during a media briefing held on Wednesday.
We had this some time ago, I think before what we introduced what they call flexible exchange rate regime back in 2000. We give some guidance daily to the market. Today, interbank, the range within the interbank market, we will issue a range, like a band. There's a middle rate will be based on previous day weighted average exchange rate in the interbank market. We take that as a guidance in the middle path and plus or minus certain margin, say for 1%. For example, if the previous day interbank market weighted average is 360, within the interbank market, they can trade between, if it is 1%, plus 3.6, minus 3.6. So 360, 3.6 and 360 minus 3.6 is the range. Within that, they can play around and do the transaction within that range.
Further, other measures announced by the central bank to maintain rupee stability are expected to come into action in the near future, such as the long overdue ban on open account transactions.
To ban the open account foreign exchange transactions and also some conditions on DA and DB terms. That circular has already been issued by the Minister of Finance and it will be fully effective from 20th of May. So what we expect from that is mainly to discourage the informal market activities which is happening outside the banking system, and as a result the exchange rate could be stabilized sooner, and also the premium between the black market and the grey market can also be reduced, and it will also make available a lot more foreign exchange into the formal banking channel so that we can allocate, or banking sector can allocate that available foreign exchange to finance all the essential imports. That is what is needed for the public right now.
Shares at the Colombo Stock Exchange ended in the green today as the oil price share index ended at 8,098.41 points after gaining 343.79 points. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks gained 132.14 points or 5.22% to end at 2,662 points. Share volumes were 117.4 million, while the market turnover was 2.1 billion rupees. The transportation sector was the highest contributor to turnover, while the food, beverage and tobacco sectors were the second highest. Foreign purchases amounted to 55 million rupees, while foreign sales stood at 45 million. During the week, the SPI and the S&P SL20 gained 9.03 and 10.87% respectively, thus recording an average daily turnover of 1.45 billion rupees. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. We hope you join us tomorrow at the same time. Good night.